the source of magic in ancient Egypt. Let us begin our journey tonight by drifting back through the mists of time, to a land of immense and ancient power, a civilization born from the life-giving waters of a single, great river. This is the story of ancient Egypt, a world of golden pharaohs, of monumental pyramids, and of profound and mysterious gods. But our story tonight is not just about history, it is about the very force that the Egyptians believed animated the entire cosmos, a force they called Heka. For the ancient Egyptians, magic was not something supernatural, not a force that stood outside of the natural world. It was the very opposite. It was the primordial essence, the great and silent energy that had existed before the first sunrise, the power that the gods themselves had used to create the world from the dark and formless waters of chaos. And it was a power that, with the right knowledge and the right words, could be wielded by mortals. Can you picture it? A world where words had weight, where images could breathe, and where a whispered incantation could shape the very fabric of reality. This was the world of the ancient Egyptian magician. But in this land, the keepers of this sacred and dangerous knowledge were not wild sorcerers living in the desolate wastes of the desert. They were the most learned and most respected members of society, the scribes and the priests. They were the guardians of the sacred texts, the masters of the holy words, the quiet and disciplined scholars who spent their entire lives in the great, silent temples and the vast, cool libraries, studying the profound and intricate secrets of the universe. Their training was long and arduous. From a young age, they would learn the thousands of beautiful and complex hieroglyphic symbols, an art that was as demanding as it was sacred. For to the Egyptian mind, these hieroglyphs were no mere symbols, they were living things, each one imbued with a life and a power of its own. To carve a hieroglyph into stone was to give it an eternal and unchangeable existence. To write a spell on a papyrus scroll was to give it a voice that could echo in the great, silent halls of eternity. Imagine, if you will, one of these magician scribes, sitting cross-legged on the cool, stone floor of a temple scriptorium. The only sound is the gentle, rhythmic scratch of his reed brush on a fresh sheet of papyrus. The air is thick with the sweet and sacred scent of incense and of old, dry papyrus. He is meticulously copying a spell from an ancient and revered text, perhaps a spell from the Great Pyramid texts, the oldest religious writings in the entire world. He works with a profound and almost reverent concentration, for he knows that a single mistake, a single misplaced symbol, could render the entire spell powerless, or worse, could unleash a chaotic and uncontrollable force. His palette, a simple, rectangular piece of wood, holds his two cakes of ink, one of a deep, river mud black, and one of a rich, sacred red. And as he works, he whispers the words of the spell aloud, his voice a low and quiet murmur, for he knows that the spoken word has just as much power as the written one. This was the quiet and patient work of the Egyptian magician, work of deep learning, of immense skill, and of profound and unshakable faith in the power of the written word. And at the very apex of this magical hierarchy stood the pharaoh himself. The king of Egypt was not just a mortal ruler, he was a living god, a divine being who acted as the great intermediary between the world of the gods and the world of humanity. He was the arch-magician, the great high priest of all the temples, the one whose sacred duty it was to maintain Ma'at, the divine and cosmic order of the universe. And it was through magic, through the correct and precise performance of the ancient rituals, that he upheld this sacred balance. The great temples were not just places of worship, they were great, cosmic engines, places where the power of Heka was concentrated and directed to ensure that the sun would rise each morning, that the Nile would flood its banks each year, and that the kingdom of Egypt would continue to prosper. The pharaoh was the great conductor of this magnificent and cosmic symphony. But the magic of ancient Egypt was not a power that was confined to the great and powerful alone. It permeated every aspect of daily life, from the simple farmer to the skilled craftsman. Amulets, small and beautiful charms that were carved in the shape of sacred symbols like the ankh or the scarab beetle, were worn by everyone for protection against evil spirits and misfortune. And in a remarkable and beautiful ritual that speaks to their deep and visceral belief in the power of words, an aspiring magician or even an ordinary person seeking a magical cure could literally consume a spell. How was this done? A sacred and powerful spell would be written on a small piece of papyrus. This papyrus would then be submerged in a bowl of pure water. And as the fibers of the papyrus softened and the ink began to blur and to dissolve into the water, the individual would drink down the enchanted liquid, physically ingesting the sacred and powerful symbols, taking the very essence of the magic into their own body. This was a world that was alive with magic. And perhaps the most storied and most legendary of all the great wizards of ancient Egypt was a man named Imhotep, a brilliant polymath and a true paragon of his age, who served as the vizier to the great pharaoh Djoser during the Old Kingdom. So powerful was Imhotep's magic, so deep was his understanding of the sacred arts, that it was said he could summon the very gods themselves to his aid, using an arcane and powerful invocation that has survived the millennia to tantalize us with its strange and beautiful implications. Imagine Imhotep, in a pure and consecrated space, standing before a simple, olive wood table, a silver censer burning with the sacred smoke of myrrh and of goose fat. He recites the ancient and powerful words, his voice a low and resonant chant that echoes in the quiet stillness of the night. And as he speaks the final words of power, a figure begins to materialize in the smoke, the form of a great priest, dressed in a robe of pure, white linen, a divine being who has been called forth from the other world to share its sacred wisdom. This was the great and profound magic of ancient Egypt, a magic that was woven into the very fabric of their culture and their identity, a quiet and powerful whisper from the banks of the Nile, a whisper that still echoes in our own world to this very day. In the quiet and mystical heart of all magical traditions, from the sun-baked temples of the Nile to the misty, oak-shrouded groves of the Celtic Druids, lies a single, profound, and universal belief, that words have power. This was not a mere philosophical concept, it was a fundamental and literal truth. For the ancient magician, a word was not just a symbol that represented a thing, it was the thing itself, its very essence captured in a sound, in a vibration, in a breath. To speak a word was to call its essence into being. And to know the true and secret name of a thing, be it a spirit, a god, or a force of nature, was to have absolute and total mastery over it. The art of the spell, the carefully crafted incantation, was therefore the very cornerstone of all magic, a sacred and dangerous science of sound and of soul. Can you picture it? An ancient shaman, his face painted with the symbols of his animal guides, stands before a great, crackling bonfire under a sky that is filled with a breathtaking canopy of stars. He begins to chant, his voice at first a low and quiet murmur, a sound that seems to rise from the very earth itself. And as he chants, his voice begins to grow in power, in rhythm, and in intensity, the ancient and sacred words weaving together to form a powerful and resonant ladder of sound, a ladder that his spirit can climb to travel into the other world. The very air around him seems to thicken and to hum with a strange and new energy. This was the power of the spell, a power that could heal the sick, that could summon the rain, and that could grant the shaman a glimpse into the great and hidden mysteries of the future. This belief in the inherent power of words was perhaps most beautifully and most profoundly expressed in the magical traditions of ancient Egypt. The Egyptians believed that their entire universe had been created through the power of a single, divine utterance from the great Creator God. And so, for them, the spoken and the written word were imbued with a divine and creative force. The magical spells that were inscribed on the walls of their tombs and on their papyrus scrolls were not just simple prayers, they were powerful and active agents, living entities that would continue to work their magic for all of eternity in the afterlife. And in their rituals, as we have seen, they would often seek to physically absorb this magical power, dissolving the written spells in water and drinking the enchanted liquid, a powerful and literal act of taking the magic into their very being. But the most potent of all words were the secret names of the gods. To know a god's true name was to have a measure of control over them, a dangerous and powerful knowledge that was guarded with the utmost secrecy by the priestly elite. The famous story of the goddess Isis and the sun god Ra perfectly illustrates this belief. In the myth, Ra, the great king of the gods, had grown old and weary. And Isis, a powerful and ambitious sorceress, desired to know his secret name, a name that held the key to his immense power. And so, she devised a clever and cunning plan. She gathered some of the spittle that had dribbled from the old god's mouth as he slept, and she mixed it with the earth to create a magical and poisonous serpent. She then placed this serpent on the path where Ra walked each day. And when the serpent bit the great sun god, he was filled with a terrible and agonizing poison, a poison that none of the other gods could cure. In his desperation, Ra finally and reluctantly revealed his secret name to Isis, and she, in turn, used her own powerful magic to heal him. With this new and secret knowledge, Isis became one of the most powerful and most worshipped of all the Egyptian deities. This belief in the power of sacred names and of powerful words was not confined to Egypt. In the mystical traditions of the Jewish Kabbalah, the 72 secret names of God are believed to hold immense and creative power. And in the Christian tradition, the very Gospel of John begins with the famous and profound declaration, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." And throughout the European Middle Ages, the belief in the power of magical words continued to hold a powerful sway over the popular imagination. The famous and enigmatic word, abracadabra, for instance, was widely believed to be a powerful protective charm against illness, particularly the plague. How was it used? The word would be written out on a piece of parchment, arranged in a magical, inverted triangle. And this amulet would be worn around the neck for 9 days, and then, on the final day, it would be tossed backwards over the shoulder into an eastward flowing stream, the magic of the disappearing word carrying the illness away with it. And even in our own modern fantasy literature, this ancient and powerful belief in the magic of words continues to resonate. In Ursula K. Le Guin's magnificent Earthsea series, for instance, a wizard's power is derived entirely from his knowledge of the true speech, the ancient and secret language of creation, in which to know the true name of a thing is to have complete and total mastery over it. And in the world of Harry Potter, the spells that the young wizards learn at Hogwarts, from the simple Wingardium Leviosa to the terrible and unforgivable curses, are all a powerful testament to the enduring and magical idea that words themselves can shape and can alter the very fabric of reality. The art of the spell, the power of the spoken and the written word, is perhaps the oldest and most fundamental form of magic, a quiet and beautiful whisper that has echoed through every culture and every age, a timeless and powerful reminder that the words we choose to use have a real and a profound power, a power to create, a power to destroy, and a power to heal. Just as a king or a queen bears a magnificent scepter to signify their royal authority, so too does the wizard wield his staff or his wand, not merely as a symbol of his power, but as the very heart and conduit of his arcane strength. Unlike the scepter, which often represents the temporal power and the dominion of men over their earthly kingdoms, the wizard's wand is a far more personal and more mystical object. It is a concentrated vessel for his magic, a sacred tool through which the great and unseen forces of the universe can be channeled, can be shaped, and can be directed. The greater the wizard, the more potent his wand, a tool that is capable of both miraculous acts of creation and of terrifying feats of devastation. The wand is not just a simple tool of the trade, it is a true and profound extension of the wizard's very being, a means of manipulating the invisible forces that govern the cosmos. For the most powerful and most skilled practitioners of the magical arts, their wand can be used to shape destiny itself, to alter the very fabric of reality, and to bend the great elements to their indomitable will, whether it is to bring a new and brilliant light into the world or to cast it into a deep and everlasting shadow. One of the earliest and most famous examples of such a powerful and magical object belonged to none other than Jupiter, the great and supreme god of classical mythology. Jupiter, who was known as the ruler of the heavens and the great bringer of light, held a magnificent scepter of unrivaled and almost unimaginable power. This was no ordinary creation, it was said to have been forged by the great god of fire himself, and it was infused with the very essence of the thunderbolt, making it a tool of both divine creation and of terrible, swift destruction. When Jupiter wielded his mighty scepter, the very heavens themselves were said to tremble, and a great and brilliant light was born from the primordial chaos. His power was so immense that no mortal or even God could withstand his might when this sacred staff was in his hand. The fleet-footed messenger of the gods, Mercury, who also acted as the gentle guide of souls to the underworld, wielded a staff of his own, though his was imbued with subtler and more mysterious powers. It famously bore two beautiful, silvery serpents that were entwined around its shaft, a powerful and ancient symbol of the delicate and eternal balance between life and between death. With this enchanted wand, Mercury could guide the spirits of the newly deceased on their final journey, and he could also cast powerful and gentle spells. The great 17th-century poet, John Milton, once wrote that Mercury's opiate rod had the incredible power to induce an enchanted and peaceful sleep, to ease the suffering of mortals, and to soothe the weary with the gentle and magical touch of its tip. This rod, entwined with its two serpents, was not only a guide to the mysterious underworld, but also a potent and beautiful emblem of transformation and of healing. Even in the deep and misty past, long before the great civilizations of Greece and of Rome, it seems that wizards roamed the earth, their magic wands so precious and so powerful that they were often buried with them, accompanying them into the great beyond. Archaeologists, in their tireless and patient quest to uncover the forgotten secrets of our most ancient ancestors, believe they may have found evidence of Britain's earliest known wizard, in a ceremonial burial site that is known as the Pavilan tomb. This ancient grave, which dates all the way back to around 24,000 BCE, holds the remains of a young man who was laid to rest with a pair of beautiful and magnificent ivory mammoth tusks. What is most intriguing is that these tusks had been deliberately and ritually broken, a practice that strongly suggests that they may have once served as a powerful and sacred magic staff. You see, ivory, which was treasured in the ancient world for its mystical properties, was believed to be a powerful conduit for magic. And to break the wizard's scepter upon his death was not merely an act of reverence, it was a sacred and necessary ritual, a way to ensure that the immense power that was contained within the wand did not fall into the wrong hands, or linger in the world where it might cause unintended harm. This ancient and profound ritual of breaking the wand to signify the end of a wizard's power persisted through the ages, manifesting itself in the great stories of old and in the magnificent works of the great bard himself, William Shakespeare. In his final and most magical play, The Tempest, we witness the very moment when the great and powerful wizard, Prospero, renounces his magic, choosing to end his mystical and often heavy influence over the world. He famously and solemnly declares, "Graves at my command have waked their sleepers, op-ed, and let 'em forth by my so potent art." but this rough magic I here abjure. I'll break my staff, bury it certain fathoms in the earth, and deeper than did ever plummet sound, I'll drown my book." Prospero's powerful and poignant decision to break his staff and to relinquish his magic marks the final, contemplative act of a wizard who had commanded the very elements, who had raised the dead, and who had shaped the very fates of all those around him. The act of burying the staff symbolizes the burial of magic itself, a quiet and solemn return to the natural order after the wizard's powerful art had for so long disrupted the world's delicate balance. Yet, the immense and symbolic power of the wand remains a potent and enduring force in our collective imagination. Jupiter, the great god of light and of thunder, serves as the powerful archetype of the wizard who wields his staff to illuminate the darkness. His great staff is a symbol of clarity and of truth, a power that can push back the shadows and reveal all that is hidden. The magical power of the wizard's staff to overcome the forces of evil is vividly and beautifully depicted in our own modern literature, most notably in Ursula K. Le Guin's magnificent A Wizard of Earthsea. In this timeless tale, the young and powerful wizard, Ged, faces a terrifying shadow beast, a creature of pure darkness and of deep, personal malevolence. And with only his simple, wooden staff as a weapon, Ged calls forth its full and brilliant power in a final, desperate duel. As the ancient text reads, Ged lifted up the staff high, and the radiance of it brightened, burning with so white and great a light, that it compelled and harrowed even that ancient darkness. In that light, all form of man sloughed off the thing that came toward Ged. It drew together and shrank and blackened. Here, in this beautiful and powerful passage, the staff is no longer just a simple tool. It becomes the very embodiment of Ged's own inner strength, a powerful weapon of pure light that can strip away the darkness, revealing the truth and the form that lies beneath. This scene powerfully underscores the ultimate and most noble role of the wizard's wand, to bring forth a great and brilliant illumination in times of profound and terrible darkness, to wield the immense power of the cosmos, not merely for personal gain, but for the healing and the protection of the world. In every culture, in every age, the wand has been more than just a symbol of magic. It is the very essence of the wizard's deep and profound connection to the mystical and invisible forces that bind our universe together. Whether it is carved from the ivory of a long-dead mammoth, adorned with the beautiful and sinuous forms of serpents, or forged in the fiery heart of a distant volcano, the wand remains the ultimate tool of power, a timeless and beautiful symbol of the eternal and epic struggle between the forces of light and of darkness, of good and of evil. In the misty annals of the ancient Celtic peoples, who inhabited the lands of Britain, of Ireland, and of Gaul, there existed a powerful and deeply revered priestly class who were known as the Druids. These were not just simple priests, they were the wise men and women of their society, the keepers of the sacred traditions, the judges, the healers, the astronomers, and the philosophers. And they were also believed to be the mightiest sorcerers of their age, individuals who possessed a profound and intimate connection to the natural world, a magic that was woven from the very stuff of the ancient forests, the rolling hills, and the sacred, flowing waters of their lands. To be chosen as a Druid was to embark on a long and arduous lifelong journey of initiation, a path that could only be trod by those who possessed a deep and innate affinity for the spiritual and the natural arts. From a tender childhood, these chosen adepts were groomed in the ancient and secret ways of magic. Their training, which was conducted not in great, stone temples, but in the quiet and sacred seclusion of the deep forest groves, could span the course of 3 long decades before they could finally claim the mantle of a fully fledged Druid. This long and patient period of study was conducted entirely through oral tradition. The Druids believed that their sacred knowledge was too powerful to be committed to writing, and so, thousands upon thousands of verses of sacred lore, of history, of law, and of magical incantations had to be painstakingly committed to memory. These Druidic high priests were far more than just religious figureheads. They were the trusted and indispensable advisors to the great kings and the powerful chieftains of the Celtic tribes. Their wisdom was so revered that their counsel could sway the very fate of nations. And their magical prowess was the stuff of legend. They were said to be able to conjure great, thick, otherworldly mists to confuse their enemies on the battlefield, to summon powerful storms to wreck the ships of their invaders, and to cast great and terrible spells that could incapacitate not just a single foe, but an entire army. The Irish legends speak of a great druid named Frenin, who, at the behest of his king, conjured a supernatural, invisible fence around the royal host, allowing them to completely and utterly destroy their enemies in a single, bloody stroke. For the Druids, the entire natural world was alive with a sacred and powerful energy, and no living thing was more revered, more sacred, than the mighty oak tree. These towering and ancient beings were seen as living bridges, as great and powerful conduits between the realms of the earth and of the sky, their deep roots delving into the dark, secret soil, and their high branches reaching towards the heavens. And growing upon these sacred oaks was another plant of immense magical power, the mistletoe. This strange and ethereal plant, which grows between the earth and the sky, was held by the Druids as a supreme source of healing magic, a plant that could cure any illness and protect against any evil. But it could only be harvested with the utmost and most solemn ceremony. It had to be cut on the 6th day of the new moon by a virtuous and white-clad druid, using a small, sharp, and golden sickle. The Druids themselves, when they performed their great and sacred rituals, were clad in billowing robes of the purest white, and they bore great, wooden staves that were carved from the wood of another sacred tree, the yew, a tree that was long associated with the deep and profound mysteries of death and of resurrection. And upon these wizardly wands were graven the secret signs of the Ogham, a mystical and ancient alphabet that was carved into the bark of trees, each character a key to unlocking the vast and unseen potential of the spirit world. The tales of the Druids are replete with vivid and beautiful accounts of wizardly warfare, where great sorcerers in the service of rival rulers would unleash the full and terrible fury of their arcane arsenals. The very elements themselves became great and powerful weapons in these uncanny conflicts. The great northern druid, Kithru, was said to have dried up all the wells of the Southlands with a single, powerful word, only for the southern druid, Mag Ruth, to strike the ground with his silver stave and unseal a new and hidden spring from deep within the earth. Kithru conjured a terrible and unnatural rain of fire and of blood from the heavens, and Mag Ruth, in turn, breathed upon his enemies, creating a petrifying magic that turned the rival druids into great, silent, standing stones upon the field of battle. To delve into the quiet and beautiful world of the Druids is to encounter a magic that is at once primal and profound, a sorcery that is woven from the very stuff of myth and of the living landscape itself. Theirs was a craft of the oak and of the mistletoe, of great, megalithic secrets that were whispered on the solstice dawn. And to follow the dear tracks of their ancient and beautiful wisdom is to glimpse a world that is thrumming with a deep and hidden life, a place where every stone and every tree throbs with the quiet and gentle pulse of a vast and ensouled cosmos, a place where the boundary between the seen and the unseen is but a trick of the light, a soft and beautiful mist that is waiting to be unwoven by those with the eyes to see and the sacred words to speak the unutterable. In the vast and wondrous world of myth and of magic, there is perhaps no power that is more profound, more absolute, or more terrifying than the ability to change one's very form. Shape-shifting stands as the ultimate expression of arcane might, a power that allows its wielders to bend the very fabric of their own being to their will, to cast off the chains of their physical form and to become whatever they desire. And among the myriad of practitioners of this uncanny and ancient art, it is the great wizards and the powerful sorceresses who reign supreme. They can not only reshape their own flesh like clay upon a potter's wheel, but can even transmute the forms of others through the sheer and irresistible force of their enchantments. With a single, whispered word or a simple, graceful gesture, they can assume the guise of any creature imaginable, from the most fearsome and terrible of demons to the most majestic and beautiful of beasts. And in the annals of Greek myth and legend, few figures loom as large or as menacingly as Circe, the bewitching and powerful sorceress whose very name conjures images of dark enchantment and of a primal, untamed dread. She was the daughter of Helios, the great sun god himself, and her fiery tresses were said to blaze with the same incandescent and beautiful hue as her celestial father. And yet, for all her radiant beauty, there was an aura of otherworldly and dangerous menace about this great mistress of the arcane arts. Sequestered on her enchanted and beautiful island of Aeaea, Circe would play host to many an unwary traveler, luring them into her magnificent palace with sumptuous feasts and with sweet, honeyed words. But woe betide those who partook of her banquet. For with a simple tap of her magic wand, the great sorceress could transform her unsuspecting guests into base and brutish animal forms. Men found themselves suddenly and horrifically trapped in the bristling and coarse hides of swine, while women were twisted into the beautiful and sinuous forms of serpents, a grotesque and tragic menagerie of lost souls, ensnared forever by her powerful and terrible sorcery. Even the great and wily Odysseus, that paragon of cunning and of wit, nearly fell victim to Circe's dark machinations. It was only through the timely and divine intervention of the god Hermes, the swift messenger of the gods, that the great hero received the means to resist her powerful spells. Hermes gave Odysseus a magical flowering onion, the allium moly, whose strange and uncanny properties shielded him from all enchantment. And armed with this powerful talismanic herb, Odysseus was able to compel the great sorceress to restore his comrades, who she had turned into pigs, back to their true and human forms. But for most who stumbled into Circe's beautiful and deadly domain, there was no such reprieve. Condemned to root and to wallow in their cursed and animal shapes, these wretched beings retained only the bitter and tragic dregs of their human reason, a cruel and twisted fate that rendered their imprisonment all the more excruciating. Sustained on a diet of acorns and of cornel berries, the mythic food of the deceased, they lingered in a sad and hopeless limbo, a state between life and oblivion. The ancient legends say that Circe's mastery over the forces of creation and of destruction stemmed from an arcane and beautiful art of hair braiding. Each intricate knot and each delicate plait was a powerful binding of magical energies. The very elements themselves were said to tremble at her passage, the great trees uprooting themselves and the hard stones bleaching to a bone-pale hue in her presence. To cross this dreaded and powerful enchantress was to court a doom that was far beyond mere death. It was a lesson that was hard learned by the demigod Picus, who was transformed into a woodpecker for spurning her romantic advances, and by the beautiful sea nymph, Scylla, who was warped into a writhing and monstrous serpent for daring to rival the great Circe in love. In the figure of Circe, we find a powerful and enduring archetype, one that is both alluring and terrifying, the feminine incarnation of an ancient and untamed occult power, seductive and sinister in equal and beautiful measure. But the art of shape-shifting was not confined to the great sorceresses alone. The power of invisibility, too, is a staple of the shapeshifter's incredible arsenal. In the ages past, this great and powerful boon was often bestowed through enchanted and magical items, a helm of darkness that was given to the great Greek hero, Perseus, or a shimmering and beautiful cloak of unseenness for the fledgling wizard, Harry Potter. Wrapped in these uncanny and magical vestments, the bearer could slip unseen through any warded portal or any guarded passageway, penetrating the most impregnable of sanctums without leaving a single trace. And the great gods themselves were often masters of this elusive art. Odin, the great Norse All-Father, was a powerful wizard whose shape-shifting prowess was the very stuff of saga and of skaldic verse. This dread and wise sovereign of warriors and of wizards could take on any form he pleased, from the mightiest and most terrible of dragons to the lowliest and most humble of beggars. In one chilling and famous tale, Odin even dared to impersonate a corpse, hanging lifeless from the great world tree for 9 long days and 9 long nights, in a desperate and painful bid to wrest the forbidden and secret knowledge of the runes from the very clutches of death itself. And imbued with these new and powerful magical secrets, the great god cast off his cadaverous guise and rose anew, a living and powerful wellspring of occult wisdom made flesh. In these timeless and beautiful stories of shape-shifting, we see the art as both a great boon and a terrible bane, a power that can uplift or destroy, that can damn or deliver, an untapped and beautiful potential that lurks within every living soul. For centuries upon centuries, a select and secret group of seekers, of philosophers, and of magicians have been driven by an extraordinary and all-consuming quest. They sought the creation of the Philosopher's Stone. This legendary and miraculous substance, which was said to be more precious than any earthly treasure, promised not only the incredible ability to transmute base metals, like lead, into pure and perfect gold, but also the even greater and more profound gift of eternal life itself. The alchemists, these mystical and often misunderstood figures who were a unique and fascinating blend of scientist and of sorcerer, dedicated their entire lives to unraveling this ultimate and most sacred of all secrets. They pored over the ancient and arcane texts, they delved deep into the hidden mysteries of medicine, and they scrutinized the slow and silent movements of the stars, all in the relentless and patient pursuit of this one, elusive goal. Their belief was not an unfounded one. Many were deeply and profoundly convinced that the great enigma of the Philosopher's Stone had been solved long ago, by the great and wise wizards of ancient Egypt, and that its secret formula lay hidden in their cryptic and beautiful writings, just waiting to be rediscovered and deciphered by a worthy and dedicated mind. And among these determined and brilliant seekers, one name stands out above all the others, a name that has become synonymous with the legend of the Philosopher's Stone itself, Nicolas Flamel. This 14th-century French alchemist is said to have achieved the impossible. According to the legends, Flamel unlocked the great and final secret of the stone, and he used its incredible power to transform mercury into pure gold and, it is whispered, to attain a form of immortality for himself and for his beloved wife, Perenelle. Flamel's incredible and tantalizing tale has captured the imagination of the world for centuries, most recently gaining a new and vibrant life in the magical world of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, where the great alchemist and his wife are depicted as being very much alive, residing quietly in Devon and celebrating Flamel's 665th birthday. The novel portrays the Philosopher's Stone as an object of immense and dangerous power, coveted by the dark wizard Voldemort and protected by the young and courageous hero, Harry. But who was the real Nicolas Flamel? He was born in the year 1330, and for much of his life, he led a quiet and unremarkable existence in the bustling city of Paris, working as a simple bookseller and a scribe. That is, until a fateful night when, it is said, an angel appeared to him in a vivid and powerful dream. This celestial being, the story goes, foretold the arrival of a miraculous and ancient book, a book that would grant him extraordinary and almost unimaginable powers, if only he could decipher its deep and mysterious secrets. Flamel's own writings describe the fulfillment of this strange and beautiful prophecy. He wrote, "There fell into my hands, for the sum of 2 florins, a gilded book, very old and large. It was not of paper, nor of parchment, as other books be, but was only made of the delicate rind of tender young trees. The cover of it was of brass, well bound, all engraving with letters and strange figures. He went on to describe how this strange and beautiful book contained thrice 7 leaves, and that on every 7th leaf, there was no writing, but instead, a beautiful and mysterious painting. On the first 7th leaf, he said, there was painted a rod, and 2 great serpents swallowing it up. This enigmatic and beautiful book, which was said to be the Book of Abraham the Jew, would come to consume Flamel's life for the next 21 long and often frustrating years. He embarked on extensive and difficult travels, journeying all the way to Spain to seek the help of Jewish scholars in unlocking the book's ancient and cryptic secrets. And finally, with the aid of a learned Hebrew scholar, Flamel claimed to have at last created his own Philosopher's Stone. Flamel meticulously and proudly recorded the great and momentous event, which he says occurred on April 25, in the year 1382. Following always my book, from word to word, he wrote, I made projection of the red stone upon the like quantity of mercury, which I transmuted truly into almost as much pure gold, better assuredly than common gold, more soft and more pliable. Conscious of the immense and dangerous power that was now at his fingertips, Flamel asserted that he had only performed this great transmutation into gold 3 times. And instead of using this incredible new ability to amass a great personal wealth, he reportedly used his newfound riches to fund the construction of hospitals, of chapels, and of churches throughout the city of Paris, perhaps seeking to balance his strange and supernatural gift with a series of earthly and benevolent good deeds. And if the legends are to be believed, Flamel and his beloved wife, Perenelle, continue their long and immortal existence to this very day. Beyond the fanciful sighting in the world of Harry Potter, there were other, more alleged reports of the couple in India during the 17th century, as noted by the French archaeologist, Paul Lucas. The tale of Nicolas Flamel and the Philosopher's Stone continues to captivate us, beautifully and perfectly blurring the lines between what is history, what is legend, and what is pure and beautiful magic. It speaks to our deep and eternal fascination with the possibility of transcending our own human limitations, of unlocking the very secrets of life itself. Whether it is a matter of fact or of beautiful and enduring fiction, the great and quiet quest for the Philosopher's Stone remains a powerful and timeless symbol of humanity's relentless and often secret pursuit of knowledge, of wisdom, and of the tantalizing and beautiful possibility that true and profound magic might exist, hidden just beyond our grasp. In the swirling and beautiful mists of myth and of history, there looms a figure who is both enigmatic and awe-inspiring. This is Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice greatest Hermes, a legendary sage who was said to have been born from the mystical and beautiful union between the great Greek god, Hermes, and his ancient Egyptian counterpart, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, Thoth. He was not just a man, not just a god, but a great and powerful synthesis of both, a figure who was said to have wielded a mastery over the arcane arts that dwarfed the power of any mere mortal mage. The very existence of Hermes Trismegistus is a powerful testament to the incredible and beautiful intermingling of the Greek and the Egyptian cultures in the ancient city of Alexandria. According to the whispered and ancient tales of antiquity, this mighty and powerful wizard committed his ineffable and profound wisdom to a vast corpus of writings, the fabled Hermetic texts, which were said to have been composed in the time of Moses himself. This incredible and occult library was said to have spanned some 42 separate volumes, each one a great grimoire of almost unimaginable magical potency. And of all these esoteric and mysterious texts, none was more sacred or more revered than the famous Emerald Tablet, a crystalline codex that was believed to enshrine the ultimate and most profound secrets of the entire cosmos. Legend has it that Hermes Trismegistus himself inscribed these beautiful pages, distilling the very essence of all magic into 13 cryptic and powerful texts. The discovery of this mystic and beautiful jewel is a tale in itself, a story that is shrouded in myth and in legend. Some ancient accounts claim that Sarah, the wife of the great patriarch Abraham, unearthed it from the wizard's own hidden cave tomb. Tragically, the bulk of the great Hermetic canon is now thought to have been lost to the ages, consumed in the great and terrible conflagration that devoured the magnificent library of Alexandria in the year 97 BCE. And yet, the quiet whispers persist, rumors of a hidden cache of surviving volumes, hidden deep in some desert catacomb, just waiting for the prophesied hour of their great revelation, a tantalizing and beautiful prospect, to be sure, for any who would seek to plumb the deep and mysterious depths of the arcane. But even the meager and beautiful fragments of the thrice greatest lore have proven to be a powerful wellspring for sorcerous inspiration, informing the sacred spells and the quiet, secret rituals of countless mages down through the long and winding centuries. The very first lines of the Emerald Tablet encapsulate the beautiful and profound core of the great wizard's entire philosophy. They read, "That which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above, to achieve the wondrous work of the one thing." In this single, cryptic, and beautiful formula lies the very key to the entire Hermetic worldview, a vision of the cosmos as a vast and interconnected web of beautiful and profound correspondences. The microcosm, the small world of man, perfectly mirrors the macrocosm, the great world of the universe. And the adept, the magician who truly and deeply grasps this profound truth, can learn to wield the very powers of creation itself. Such a staggering and beautiful legacy seems almost beyond belief. And yet, it pales in comparison to the incredible achievements of Hermes' own divine progenitors. The wing-footed Hermes, the great messenger of Olympus, was said to have dictated a staggering 20,000 volumes to the philosopher Iamblichus in the 3rd century BCE, only to surpass himself with a further 36,000 books that were delivered unto the Egyptian priest, Manetho, an incredible output that would put the most prolific of all our mortal scholars to shame. And then, of course, there is the great Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, the divine scribe and the great counselor to the entire Egyptian pantheon. In the ancient annals of the Nile, Thoth is referred to as nothing less than the divine author of all the sacred texts, a great and powerful intellect from whence flows the entirety of all human knowledge. And the great god himself proudly proclaims in the ancient and beautiful inscriptions, "I am Thoth, master of divine words. He who acts as interpreter to all the gods." In the figure of Hermes Trismegistus, we find a character who is at once historical and deeply archetypal. He is a sage, a sorcerer, and a psychopomp, a divine guide for the soul's long and epic journey to gnosis, or enlightenment. To walk the quiet and winding path of Hermeticism is to follow in his ancient and powerful footsteps, to slowly and patiently ascend the great and beautiful ladder of the celestial spheres, in the quiet and sacred pursuit of that ultimate and most profound alchemical transmutation, the forging of the base metal of our own ignorance into the beautiful, philosophic gold of true and divine illumination. It is a great and noble quest, a quest that has fired the imagination of magicians, of mystics, and of all the great seekers of wisdom for millennia upon millennia. And it is a quest that continues to beckon to us, a quiet and beautiful whisper from across the great and silent abyss of the ages. In the great and vibrant age of the English Renaissance, at the brilliant and often treacherous court of Queen Elizabeth I, there stood a powerful and enigmatic figure. This was Dr. John Dee. He was one of the most learned men in all of Europe, a gifted mathematician, a brilliant astronomer, and a trusted, if unofficial, advisor to the great Queen herself. But behind this public facade of scientific respectability and political influence, Dr. Dee lived another, more secret life. He was a man who was consumed by a deep and passionate fascination with the occult, with the ancient art of alchemy, and, above all, with the belief that it was possible for a mortal to communicate directly with the angels of God. His life was a perfect and beautiful embodiment of the Renaissance itself, a time of great transition, a time that stood on the very threshold between the old world of faith and of magic, and the new, emerging world of science and of reason. Imagine, if you will, Dr. Dee's great house at Mortlake, just outside the bustling city of London. It was home to the largest and most magnificent private library in all of England, a collection of over 4,000 books and manuscripts that covered every conceivable subject, from mathematics and astronomy to philosophy and, of course, the secret and arcane arts. His study was a place of profound and quiet wonder, a room that was filled with strange and beautiful instruments. There were great, gleaming brass astrolabes for charting the movements of the stars, intricate and complex alchemical furnaces for his experiments in transmutation, and, most importantly, the sacred and powerful tools that he used for his magical work. Central to Dr. Dee's magical practice was his famous crystal ball, a beautiful, pale pink crystal, about the size of an orange, which he claimed had been presented to him by the great Archangel Uriel himself during a powerful and visionary encounter. And equally intriguing was his obsidian mirror, a dark and beautiful scrying glass, a polished black stone that was said to have Aztec origins. Dr. Dee believed that by gazing into the deep, dark, and reflective surface of this mirror, he could receive mystical visions and peer directly into the spirit world. These objects, along with his golden layman, a magical pendant that he wore during his rituals, and his sacred wax tablets, were the integral and essential tools of his complex and beautiful angelic magic. But Dr. Dee himself did not possess the gift of sight, the ability to see the spirits that he so desperately wished to communicate with. And so, his long and often frustrating quest to speak with the angels led him to form a partnership with another, more mysterious man, a man named Edward Kelly. Kelly was a scryer, a medium, a man who claimed to have the ability to gaze into the crystal ball or the dark mirror and to see and to hear the angels that Dee so longed to contact. And so, their famous and often difficult partnership began. In the quiet and solitude of Dr. Dee's secret study, they would conduct their long and complex angelic seances. Imagine the scene. Dee, the great scholar, would sit at his desk, his pen and his paper at the ready, his heart filled with a profound and reverent sense of anticipation. And Kelly, the scryer, would gaze intently into the shimmering crystal, his face a mask of deep and otherworldly concentration. And over time, according to Dee's own meticulous and detailed diaries, their strange and beautiful partnership began to bear fruit. The angels, he claimed, began to appear to them. Kelly would describe the magnificent and powerful beings that he saw floating outside the study window or within the misty depths of the crystal itself, their forms radiant and beautiful, their voices a sound of pure and celestial wisdom. And as Kelly relayed the messages of these divine beings, Dee would furiously and meticulously record everything, every word, every symbol, every strange and beautiful detail of their otherworldly communications. And through these long and incredible conversations, Dee and Kelly claimed to have received a new and complex magical system, a system that is now known to the world as Enochian magic. This system included its own unique and beautiful language, the language of the angels themselves, a complete and complex alphabet, and a series of powerful and sacred invocations that, they believed, could give a magician unprecedented and almost unimaginable power over the supernatural realm, allowing the practitioner to compel the very spirits to carry out their magical spells. The story of Dr. John Dee is a fascinating and beautiful one, a story of a man who stood at the very crossroads of a changing world. Was he a brilliant and visionary scientist, pushing the very boundaries of human knowledge? Was he a skilled and powerful magician, a man who had truly and genuinely found a way to communicate with the divine? Or was he, perhaps, a brilliant and hopeful man who was simply being deceived by a clever and charismatic charlatan? We may never know for sure. But whatever the truth may be, his relentless and lifelong pursuit of both earthly and celestial knowledge marks him as a unique and powerful figure in the entire history of magic, a man who perfectly and beautifully bridged the great and often contradictory gap between the old, medieval world of faith and of alchemy, and the new, emerging world of the scientific revolution. The enigma of Dr. John Dee persists to this very day, a testament to the enduring and powerful human desire to understand the great and beautiful mysteries of our universe. As the great intellectual and spiritual currents of the Renaissance and the subsequent Age of Reason began to reshape the European mind, the ancient and arcane arts of magic did not simply disappear. Instead, they retreated. They went underground, finding refuge in the quiet and shadowy world of the secret society. For those who still sought to walk the old paths, to study the forbidden texts, and to practice the sacred and often dangerous rituals of their ancestors, the solitary life of a court magician like Dr. John Dee was no longer a viable or a safe option. The new age of science, with its emphasis on rationalism and on empirical evidence, had cast a long and skeptical shadow over the world of the supernatural. And so, the keepers of the ancient wisdom began to gather together in secret, forming clandestine brotherhoods and sisterhoods that were dedicated to the preservation and the practice of the magical arts, far from the prying and often hostile eyes of the outside world. One of the most enigmatic and most influential of all these early secret societies was the legendary Rosicrucian order. The story of the Rosicrucians begins not with a known historical event, but with a great and beautiful mystery. In the early years of the 17th century, a series of strange and anonymous pamphlets began to circulate throughout Germany and the rest of Europe. These texts, with their intriguing and evocative titles, the Fama Fraternitatis and the Confessio Fraternitatis, told the incredible and captivating story of a mysterious and enlightened adept named Christian Rosenkreuz, or Rosicrucians. According to these pamphlets, Rosenkreuz was a German nobleman who, in the 15th century, had embarked on a great and epic journey to the east in search of a lost and secret wisdom. He traveled to the holy lands of Damascus, of Egypt, and of Morocco, and there, he was initiated into the ancient and esoteric mysteries of Arabian magic, of Kabbalistic philosophy, and of the secret art of alchemy. When he returned to Germany, the story goes, he brought with him this incredible and profound body of knowledge, and he gathered around him a small and select group of disciples, forming a secret brotherhood that was dedicated to the great and noble work of healing the sick, of sharing their profound wisdom with those who were worthy, and of guiding the spiritual and intellectual evolution of all of humanity. The members of this secret order, it was said, were bound by a series of sacred oaths. They were to heal the sick free of charge, they were to wear no special clothing that would distinguish them from the rest of society, and they were to keep the very existence of their brotherhood a secret for 100 years. The pamphlets concluded with a dramatic and tantalizing announcement. The secret tomb of Christian Rosenkreuz had recently been discovered, and the time was now at hand for the Rosicrucian order to reveal itself to the world and to usher in a new and enlightened age of universal reformation. The publication of these strange and beautiful manifestos caused an immediate and immense sensation throughout all of Europe. Scholars, philosophers, and aspiring magicians were all captivated by the beautiful and powerful vision of the Rosicrucian Brotherhood, and many sought desperately to make contact with this elusive and secret order. But no one ever did. To this day, historians and scholars still debate the true nature of the Rosicrucian mystery. Was it a real and historical secret society, whose members remained true to their oath of secrecy? Or was it, perhaps, a beautiful and elaborate allegory, a brilliant and anonymous work of fiction that was designed to inspire a new and more spiritual and intellectual way of thinking? We may never know for sure. But whatever its true origins, the beautiful and powerful legend of the Rosicrucians would go on to inspire countless other esoteric and mystical movements for centuries to come, its name becoming a powerful and enduring symbol of a hidden and ancient stream of secret wisdom. And as the centuries passed, other secret societies, like the Freemasons, began to incorporate many of these esoteric and mystical themes into their own complex and beautiful systems of ritual and of symbolism. But it was in the late 19th century, in the bustling and fog-shrouded city of London, that the most famous and most influential of all the modern magical orders would be born. This was the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. The Victorian era was a time of great and often jarring contradictions. It was an age of incredible scientific and industrial progress, but it was also a time of deep spiritual searching, a time when many people felt a profound sense of disillusionment with the cold and materialistic worldview of the new scientific age, and they began to look for answers in the old and mysterious worlds of spiritualism, of mysticism, and of the occult. The Golden Dawn was founded in the year 1888 by three high-ranking Freemasons, Dr. William Robert Woodman, Dr. William Wynne Westcott, and Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers. They claimed that their order was based on a mysterious and ancient document, a series of cipher manuscripts that they had discovered, a document that was said to contain the hidden and secret rituals of an ancient and unknown German Rosicrucian lodge. And from these cryptic and beautiful manuscripts, they created a new and incredibly complex system of magical training, a system that was designed to guide its members, step by step, on a long and difficult journey of spiritual and magical development. The structure of the Golden Dawn was hierarchical, divided into a preparatory outer order and a secret and powerful inner order. In the outer order, the new and aspiring magician would learn the theoretical foundations of all Western magic. They would study the complex and beautiful symbolism of the Kabbalistic tree of life, the ancient arts of astrology and of tarot divination, and the basic principles of ritual magic. And after passing a series of difficult and demanding examinations, they could then be invited to be initiated into the secret and powerful inner order, which was known as the Rosi Rubii et Ori Crucis, the Order of the Ruby Rose and the Golden Cross. And it was here, in the inner order, that the true and practical work of magic began. Imagine the scene. A darkened and secret temple, its walls painted with the vibrant and beautiful colors of the elemental forces. The air is thick with the sweet and sacred scent of incense. The officers of the temple, dressed in magnificent and colorful robes, their faces hidden by masks, move with a slow and solemn grace. The new initiate is led into the temple, blindfolded, and is guided through a series of dramatic and powerful rituals that are designed to awaken their own inner magical potential and to bring them into a direct and personal contact with the divine and elemental forces of the universe. They would learn to create and to consecrate their own magical tools, their wands, their daggers, their cups, and their pentacles. They would learn the powerful and resonant Hebrew names of God and of the archangels. And they would learn the complex and beautiful arts of invocation and of evocation, of how to travel in their spirit vision to the astral planes, and of how to communicate with the great and unseen forces that govern the cosmos. The Golden Dawn, in its short and brilliant existence, attracted some of the most famous and most creative minds of its time, including the great Irish poet, William Butler Yeats, and the fiery and passionate Irish revolutionary, Maud Gonne. It was a true and powerful crucible of magical learning, a place where the ancient and scattered traditions of Western magic, the Kabbalah, the Hermetic philosophy, the Rosicrucian legends, and the grimoires of the medieval magicians, were all brought together and were synthesized into a single, coherent, and incredibly powerful system of magical theory and of practice. And although the original order itself would eventually splinter and dissolve due to internal conflicts and rivalries, its immense and profound influence would continue to shape the entire course of Western occultism for the next century and beyond. Almost every major occultist of the 20th century, and almost every modern magical tradition, from Wicca to Thelema, owes a deep and profound debt to the brilliant and beautiful, and ultimately secret, work of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. In the shadowy and often contentious annals of modern magic, there is perhaps no name that sends more shivers down the spine, no figure more shrouded in controversy and in dark legend, than Aleister Crowley. He was a notorious and brilliant British wizard of the early 20th century, a man who would come to embody a new and radical kind of magic, a magic of rebellion, of individual will, and of a profound and often terrifying personal liberation. His life was a whirlwind of esoteric study, of world travel, of poetry, and of scandal, and his influence, for better or for worse, would go on to shape the entire course of modern occultism, leaving an indelible and often misunderstood mark on the spiritual landscape of the 20th century and beyond. Crowley's own journey into the world of magic began, as did so many others of his time, with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. He was initiated into the order as a young man, and he quickly proved to be a brilliant and dedicated student, rapidly absorbing the complex and beautiful system of Kabbalah, of tarot, and of ceremonial magic that formed the core of the Golden Dawn's teachings. But Crowley's rebellious and individualistic nature soon brought him into a direct and bitter conflict with the leaders of the order. And he was eventually and dramatically expelled from the group in a flurry of mystical drama and of magical warfare. Legend has it that one of the order's chief magicians was so incensed by Crowley that he dispatched an army of spirits to assault the rebellious young sorcerer. Undeterred, Crowley forged his own, new, and revolutionary path. His great, defining moment came in the year 1904, while he was on his honeymoon in Cairo, Egypt. It was here, he claimed, that he had a profound and world-changing magical experience. Over the course of 3 days, he said, a mysterious and powerful, non-corporeal entity, a being that called itself I Was, dictated to him a new and sacred text, a book that would become the very foundation of his new philosophy. This text was the Book of the Law. And the central tenet of this new revelation was a simple and yet profoundly radical statement: do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. This was the birth of Thelema, Crowley's new spiritual and magical philosophy. For Crowley, this was not a call to simple hedonism or to anarchy. It was a profound and spiritual directive, a call for each individual to discover and to follow their own true will, their own unique and sacred purpose in the great cosmic order. And to help his followers on this path of self-discovery, Crowley established his own magical community, the Abbey of Thelema, which he founded in Sicily. It was here that he and his small group of disciples would live and would practice the strange and often extreme rituals of their new faith. Crowley's audacity knew no bounds. He famously and deliberately dubbed himself the Great Beast 666, a provocative and powerful symbol that he took from the biblical book of Revelation. And he professed, with a great and often theatrical seriousness, to be the reincarnation of several powerful and important wizards from the past, including the great Elizabethan occultist, Dr. John Dee. And like his supposed past self, Crowley delved deep into the mysteries of Enochian magic, the angelic language that Dee and Kelly had recorded centuries before. He explored the astral plane with a fearless and often reckless abandon, and he meticulously recorded the vivid and often terrifying descriptions of his otherworldly visions. In one such famous journey, which he experienced as his magical alter ego, the Master Therion, Crowley claimed to have encountered an infinitely wise and powerful wizard who revealed to him a magical egg, an egg that was said to contain the very secrets of life itself. His own autobiography boasts, with a characteristic and often unsettling bravado, of evenings that were spent in the company of hundreds of demons. Was he a madman, a charlatan, or a true and genuine prophet? Perhaps he was a complex and brilliant mixture of all three. Whatever the truth may be, his life and his work would go on to exert a profound and lasting influence on the entire world of Western esotericism. The ripples of his strange and powerful beliefs spread far and wide, eventually and unexpectedly influencing the very birth of the modern pagan religion of Wicca. Aleister Crowley remains one of the most fascinating and most controversial figures in all of modern magical history, a man whose life was a testament to the power of the individual will, and a quiet and often dark reminder of the strange and beautiful, and sometimes dangerous, paths that the human spirit can take in its endless and unyielding search for meaning, for knowledge, and for a personal connection to the divine. As the often dark and tumultuous currents of Aleister Crowley's magical philosophy were sending ripples throughout the occult world, another, quieter, and more earth-based spiritual movement was beginning to emerge from the misty and ancient landscapes of England. This was the birth of modern Wicca, a beautiful and powerful new pagan religion that would, in the second half of the 20th century, grow from a small and secret coven into a vibrant and global community. Wicca was not a continuation of the high, ceremonial magic of the Golden Dawn or of Crowley's Thelema, but was instead a gentle and beautiful rebirth of what its followers believed to be the old religion, the ancient, pre-Christian, nature-based faith of Europe. It was a spiritual path that revered the divine feminine, that celebrated the turning of the seasons, and that sought to live in a deep and harmonious balance with the natural world. The man who is most often credited with bringing this new religion to the public's attention was a retired English civil servant, an amateur anthropologist, and a dedicated occultist named Gerald Gardner. Gardner claimed that he had been initiated into a secret and surviving coven of traditional witches in the New Forest of England just before the outbreak of the Second World War. And after the last of England's archaic witchcraft laws were finally repealed in the year 1951, Gardner felt that the time was at last right to share the beautiful and life-affirming principles of this old and beautiful religion with the wider world. And so, he began to write, publishing his first, influential books on the subject and, in doing so, he laid the very foundations for what would become the modern Wiccan movement. What are the core beliefs of Wicca? At its very heart, Wicca is a religion that celebrates the divine in nature. Wiccans worship a great, horned god, a powerful and virile symbol of the wild, untamed forces of nature, and a great, triple goddess, the maiden, the mother, and the crone, who represents the three great phases of the moon and the great and eternal cycle of life, of death, and of rebirth. Their religious calendar is based on the 8 great festivals of the year, the Sabbats, which mark the turning of the seasons, from the winter solstice celebration of Yule to the great, firelit festival of Beltane in the spring. And their moral code is guided by a simple and beautiful principle known as the Wiccan Rede, which states, simply, "And it harm none, do what ye will." This is a profound and gentle ethical guideline that encourages personal freedom while at the same time emphasizing the immense importance of taking responsibility for one's own actions and of not causing harm to others. The practice of magic, or magic as it is often spelled by its practitioners to distinguish it from simple stage illusion, is a central and integral part of the Wiccan faith. But this is not the grand and often complex ceremonial magic of the Golden Dawn, nor is it the rebellious and often transgressive magic of Aleister Crowley. Wiccan magic is a more natural and more intuitive art form, a way of working in harmony with the great and unseen forces of nature to bring about positive change in one's own life and in the world. Wiccans often gather together in small groups, or covens, to perform their rituals, which are often held outdoors, in the quiet and sacred spaces of the deep forest or under the gentle and silvery light of the full moon. Imagine the scene. A small group of Wiccans, their faces illuminated by the soft and gentle light of candles, gather together in a circle. They cast a sacred and protective circle, a space that is, between the worlds, and they call upon the spirits of the four elements, of earth, of air, of fire, and of water, to be present at their rite. They honor the great god and the beautiful goddess with chants, with songs, and with offerings of wine and of cakes. And within this sacred space, they work their magic. A healing spell might involve the gentle blending of sacred herbs and oils, their fragrant aromas filling the night air. A spell for protection might involve the slow and careful chanting of ancient and powerful words, a rhythmic and beautiful sound that is designed to build and to direct their magical energy. As a modern Wiccan handbook advises, the practitioner can use chants to build your cone of power, just the way you would with drumming. You start out slow, then you build the pace and raise the volume. You chant faster and louder until you feel ready to burst with the energy, but don't pop. Direct this energy you've raised into your magic tool or object. The rise of Wicca and other forms of modern paganism in the 20th century represents a profound and powerful resurgence of interest in the ancient, pre-Christian, nature-based spiritual traditions of Europe. In a world that was becoming increasingly technological and disconnected from the natural world, Wicca offered a beautiful and powerful alternative, a spiritual path that was rooted in the earth, that celebrated the divine feminine, and that empowered the individual to take an active and a creative role in their own spiritual life. It was a quiet and beautiful rebellion against the cold and materialistic worldview of the modern age, a gentle and beautiful reminder of the ancient and enduring magic that still lies sleeping in the green heart of the world, just waiting to be reawakened. As our long and quiet journey through the vast and often shadowy history of magic comes to its end, we find ourselves in a world that seems to be, on the surface, completely and totally disenchanted. The great, scientific revolutions of the 17th and 18th centuries, and the incredible technological advancements of our own modern age, have given us a new and powerful way of understanding our universe, a worldview that is based on reason, on evidence, and on the predictable and beautiful laws of physics. In this bright and rational new world, a world of satellites, of smartphones, and of space exploration, what place is there for the old and mysterious world of magic, of wizards, and of spells? Has the ancient and eternal spell of magic finally been broken? Or perhaps, it has simply transformed. Perhaps the magic that was once practiced in the great temples of Egypt and in the secret laboratories of the alchemists has not disappeared, but has instead found a new and powerful home in the most magical and most mysterious place of all, the human imagination. The ancient and archetypal figures of the wizard and the sorceress, the powerful symbols of the wand and the cauldron, and the profound and beautiful ideas of hidden knowledge and of transformative power, continue to exert an immense and powerful hold on our collective psyche. They live on in our greatest stories, in our most beloved myths, and in our deepest and most secret dreams. Think, for a moment, of the great and enduring figures of modern fantasy literature. Think of Gandalf, the wise and powerful wizard from J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, a figure who is a direct and beautiful echo of the great Merlin of Arthurian legend and of the Norse All-Father, Odin. Think of the young wizards of Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea series, who must learn the true and secret names of things to gain mastery over them, a beautiful and modern reimagining of the ancient and powerful belief in the magic of words. And, of course, think of the magical world of Harry Potter, a world that has so completely and so powerfully captivated the imagination of an entire generation. In these stories, and in countless others, the ancient and beautiful traditions of magic are not just preserved, they are reborn, reimagined, and given a new and vibrant life for a new and modern age. Why do these stories continue to hold such a powerful sway over us? Perhaps it is because they speak to a deep and fundamental human need, a need that the rational and materialistic world of our modern age cannot always fulfill. They speak to our deep and abiding sense of wonder, to our belief that there is more to the world than just what we can see and what we can measure. They speak to our desire for transformation, for the belief that we can, through an act of will, of courage, and of imagination, transform ourselves and the world around us. And they speak to our profound and eternal hope that even in the darkest of times, there is a hidden and powerful light, a secret and beautiful magic, that can, in the end, make all things right. The enduring spell of magic is more than just a literary phenomenon, it is a testament to the incredible and boundless power of the human imagination itself. It is a reminder that while our scientific understanding of the universe has grown immensely, there are still great and beautiful mysteries that lie just beyond our grasp. And it is in the quiet and sacred space of these mysteries, in the vast and beautiful and often shadowy realms of our own imagination, that the ancient and eternal magic of our ancestors continues to live on. It is a quiet and beautiful whisper from a long-lost world, a whisper that tells us that the world is a far more magical and far more wonderful place than we often allow ourselves to believe. And with that final thought, our long and quiet journey into the vast and mysterious history of magic comes to its end. From the first, powerful whispers of creation on the banks of the Nile to the quiet and gentle rituals of a modern Wiccan coven, it has been an epic saga of immense power, of profound mystery, and of enduring wonder. Now, let the echoes of the ancient spells, the whispers of the forgotten gods, and the beautiful and powerful light of the magician's wand gently fade into the quiet of the night. It is time for the great and ancient magic to rest, and it is time for you to rest as well. Good night, and have magical, wondrous dreams.